Welcome to this explainer. Today we're looking at a fascinating cognitive framework, zeroing in on a specific type of thinker you'll definitely recognize. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to unpack what's known as the analytical personality. You know, the kind of mind that instinctively just looks at you and says, "Prove it."
And for those of you who love a good structure, here's our anatomical breakdown of the trait. First, we'll hit the analytical mindset, then communication and core needs, move into balcony versus basement, and finally, wrap up with navigating team dynamics. Simple, structured, and right to the point.
So, I want you to ask yourself, are you the person who always says, "Prove it"? Or maybe, do you instantly picture a colleague who totally embodies this skeptical, relentless truth-seeking mindset? It's that person who takes a super critical look at what everyone else in the room might just quickly and maybe blindly accept as absolute truth. They aren't trying to be difficult, I promise. They're literally just searching for the underlying reasons why things are the way they are.
To really wrap our heads around this trait, think about this metaphor: a reduction, boiling down to essence. And this brilliantly illustrates how the analytical mind works. It's like a master chef reducing a sauce to concentrate its absolute purest flavor. The analytical thinker distills these wildly complex issues down to their undeniable core facts. They completely filter out the noise and leave only what can actually be proven. Our deep dive today is grounded in the SwitchOn Strengths framework. It's a fantastic system all about discovering our innate talents, activating them in our day-to-day lives, and ultimately thriving where we are. By looking at the analytical theme through this specific lens, we get this incredibly credible, multi-layered understanding of how this mindset actually functions out in the real world.
All right, Section 1, the analytical mindset. Let's look exactly at what this mindset is made of.
The analytical trait is driven by some very specific core descriptive words: objective, number-oriented, data-driven, dispassionate, skeptical, questioning, and scientific. Now, when we hear words like skeptical or dispassionate, it's absolutely crucial to realize this isn't about being negative or uncaring. No way. It's really about a rigorous, energetic pursuit of fact-finding. An analytical mind just wants to understand how patterns affect one another, how they combine, and whether the final outcome actually fits the initial theory.
In the workplace, this mindset naturally gravitates towards certain functional roles. You might find them playing the scientist, the measurer, the counter, the fact finder, the observer, or even the logician. Listen, even if their official job title is marketing director or HR manager, this is the functional role they're playing in the room. They're the ones actively observing and measuring, searching for the logic in the chaos to see if the results actually hold water.
Ultimately, this right here is their superpower. You bring an objective and dispassionate examination to find causes and effects based entirely on facts. While everyone else might be jumping to conclusions based on a gut feeling or an overly exciting pitch, the analytical thinker brings a grounding clarity to the situation. They build solid thoughts based on what can actually be proven, which is a massive, real game changer for any team.
Moving on to Section 2, communication and core needs. It's one thing to have this mindset, but what do these individuals actually require from us to function at their absolute best?
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast between what they bring to the table and what they need to stay fueled. On one side, look at their powerful contributions. They bring an objective approach to emotional issues, and they find beautiful simplicity right in the middle of total complexity. But check out their strict requirements. To provide all that value, they need time to think. They need exact, well-researched data, and above all, they require patience from us as they gather their evidence.
So, when it comes to their communication style, a quick little two-sentence summary? Yeah, that just isn't going to cut it. They require detailed graphs, comprehensive reports, the patient to actually collect evidence, and information on literally all factors affecting a decision. They communicate best when they have the detailed reports in hand to back up what they're saying. If you want to persuade an analytical thinker, you've got to bring the receipts, for sure.
All right, Section 3, balcony versus basement. Let's look at how any great strength can sometimes act like a double-edged sword.
The framework calls this the balcony and the basement. Up on the balcony, when this trait is totally shining, the analytical thinker is seen as smart, logical, deep, thorough, and incredibly comfortable with numbers. But down in the basement, when the trait is maybe misapplied or misunderstood by others, they can be perceived as suffering from analysis paralysis. People might label them as tough, rude, short, or never satisfied, simply because they ask a lot of questions. We have to view these basement traits not as character flaws, but really just as a simple communication mismatch.
So the crucial point is this. Your objective approach to decision-making may seem unnecessarily critical to others. When an analytical person asks a dozen rapid-fire questions about a project, they're honestly just trying to understand it. But to the person presenting, well, it can feel like a personal attack. People might mistake that amazing thoroughness for a deep doubt in their ideas, or worse, a complete lack of trust.
Which brings us perfectly to our final section, Section 4, Navigating Team Dynamics. How do we actually take all this and turn it into successful collaboration? Consider this stark contrast right here. The analytical mind says, my head guides me. But someone with the empathy trait, they say, my heart guides me. If you are highly analytical, you've got to remember that others are going to have emotional, subjective, and personal opinions. And here is the real kicker. Their input is just as valuable to the team's success as your hard data is. A truly successful team needs both the head and the heart to function at its best.
Let's move to and see how this builds into another massive worldview clash. For the analytical thinker, truth is objective, and it absolutely must be measured. But for someone with, say, the connectedness theme, truth is spiritual and might be completely invisible. Just imagine these two trying to agree on a new company initiative. This brilliantly highlights why mutual understanding is just mandatory. The analytical person has to recognize that not every valuable insight can be neatly charted on a bar graph.
So what's the ultimate solution to all this friction? It's simple. Explain your analysis so they will trust your process and your motives. The tension in the room almost entirely disappears when the analytical person just takes a quick moment to explain the why behind their endless questions. If you just say, hey, I'm asking all these questions because I want to make sure your great idea is completely bulletproof before we pitch it, suddenly you aren't an adversary anymore. You're a highly rigorous ally.
I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. Whether you're the analytical one or you just work closely with someone who is, how will you share your analytical process today so others trust your motives? Think about the friction points in your team right now. Could they be solved by simply pulling back the curtain on how you process information? Because understanding this trait doesn't just make you a better thinker, it makes you a profoundly better collaborator. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Now go put this into practice.